When it comes to tech or insurance, it's just improving of the existing model through insurtech model. Not yet a model where they're going to kind of becoming really disturb and remove as a middleman and going back to the commodity business.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, everyone, and ahlan wa sahlan. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Taka Talks. Today, we have with us two esteemed guests to discuss mutual insurance and Takaful and I guess, their position in the insurance industry today. First of all, we have with us Professor Dr. Yunus Sualhi, who is a senior researcher lecturer of the International Sharia Research Academy for Islamic Finance. Professor Yunus Sualhi is a senior research fellow at INCF, which is this very well-known Islamic finance educational university, etc., in Malaysia. He's also a senior World Bank consultant and the chairman of Sharia boards of NNRB Takaful Group, Kuwait Re Takaful, and Jazair Family Takaful. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Yunus. And we have with us David Piese. Am I saying your name right?
Peace is fine.
Pieces. David Peace. All right. He is the insurance lead and advisor to the board at Vulcan AI. David is a seasoned insurance professional with over 35 years of experience, specializing in cyber risk, enterprise risk management, and blockchain technologies. He has held key roles such as global insurance lead at Sun Microsystems and contributed to the creation of the Insure Wave blockchain platform, revolutionizing marine insurance. David co-founded Crew Assist to aid seafarers during the COVID pandemic and serves on global advisory boards, including Ultimate Risk Solutions and Analytica AI Services, applying his expertise in insurance, IT, and risk management. Very big welcome to David, please. And I'm going to leave the floor to Dr. Yunus. If you could just tell us in your own words about yourself, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, first of all, Simurad and Madame Shireen, for this invitation to address your esteemed audience. It's my pleasure and to be your guest today. So my name is Prof. Yunus. As has just been introduced, I'm basically a senior lecture fellow at this international, the Global University of Islamic Finance. Um, fully in the same time doing some consultancy work with some companies, banks, somehow being in this institution, we are working closely with the Central Bank of Malaysia. So we are developing the Sharia aspect for the product, the policy documents with which the central bank comes up with. They're always backed by research, and we are the ones who do that research. And not only that, we are also fully engaged in the new Islamic finance approach, which Malaysia is actually promoting, which is the value-based intermediation, trying to come up with Islamic finance version 2, in which values ranks high, and that Islamic finance is supposed to be very much distinguished by its very deep values based on what we call maqasid al-Sharia al-Islamiyah. And in my presentation today, probably I will hint to some of these efforts on the takaful part, what kind of values that the Malaysian authorities or central bank is trying to instill in the market, and what kind of instrument that can be used for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yunus. Over to you, David.
Yes, well, I'm, as you say, I'm an insurance professional for a very long time. I started at Lloyd's of London, where I got involved in information technology at a very early stage, along with underwriting. And then I've had a long career of combining insurance and IT into risk management and what is now called insurtech. My involvement with Takaful was started at Sun Microsystems, where I started inside Microsystems. I started the Takaful part of the global insurance practice, which I headed up. It was very early days, but as I was global head of insurance, I thought it was very important that we address the Sharia compliance. But the emphasis that I was doing on Takaful was more on the micro Takaful, if you like, to the underserved, the underpenetrated market, using mutuals and co-ops in order to get more people insured. And that is something I'm still working on today with, which is now Web3, with DeFi and potentially refi to come. Currently, I'm working, I started my blockchain career way back in 2010 in Estonia, where Estonia had a state-sponsored cyber attack in 2007, and I worked on the solution that came out of that, and we took it global. So I've been very involved in the cyber world as well through that, and now more recently, I'm doing causal AI, which is very different to ChatGPT and other things. It's finding the root cause of a problem, and then using AI and computational linguistics to find that cause. So combining all these together, we have a new world of insurance and how to make tangible assets out of what are at the moment a lot of new intangible assets, which need to be tied physically into real world assets. So that's I'll stop there, but I'm involved in all these things.
Fantastic. Wow, that both of you, those are very rich biographies, and thank you for joining us today. Since I have two pretty much early pioneers in Takaful and mutual insurance, because Takaful is often seen as a form of mutual insurance, although we have to caveat, and Dr. Yunus and David will probably tell us how it's different from mutual insurance. But let me set the context here. So today, if you read reports from the international organizations, mutual insurance, Takaful being part of mutual insurance, is roughly 26% of the global insurance industry. All right. Now, David, you probably know this, and Dr. Yunus as well. Insurance really started as mutuals, right? So way back when Lloyd's of London first came about, we go back even further back then when we talk about the Aquila system within the Arabian tribes. All of these things all started as mutuals. It was just like people coming together, pulling their money, their funds together, and then saying, well, we're going to help one another in case something bad happens to you. But fast forward to modern times, and the mutual has largely shrunk, and the stock insurance company, where it's this kind of profit seeking, external capital driven insurance company, has largely taken over. Mutuals are still very strong in places like some places in Europe. Life insurance mutuals are still very strong in places like Japan, but overall it's shrunk to about a quarter of the insurance industry. So first of all, I want you guys to touch on, why do you think this has happened? Why is the mutual system not as strong as it was way back, when insurance first started? And what do you think caused this?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, mutual Scottish Widows, for example, was one of the first. One of the early days when the widows got together to bury their husbands, right? And I had my pension plan at Scottish Widows, still do. And then in the middle of a few 20 years ago, that mutual company became a stock-owned company, and they handed out windfalls to everybody who was part of the mutual, and then it was part of Lloyd's TSB. So all of a sudden there was a big wave of mutuals converting into stock-based businesses. But I think we're on the brink now of what I call modern mutuality, right? Which is where there's a revival in this, and I think there's a revival in it. In Islamic, it speaks for itself, because Takaful is by definition, where people get together to help each other and that kind of thing. Sharing in someone else's claim and that kind of thing. But I think what has happened now is we have technology which is decentralizing and centralizing, then decentralizing, and that is the blockchain world. And I think that the rise of exponential technology is in insurtech is going to bring back a lot of mutuality, and so I think it's a wave. It goes up and it comes down, and now I think we've come back again to very much where insurance started. And I think we'll see that increase. And I think we'll see Takaful increase in the next 10 years.
I mean, going into that quickly before maybe we hear Professor Yunus on his view. As we know, insurance has been very well established with the government entity, central banks, and somehow being a blocker, I would say, for innovation somehow. When we look at innovation, every single industry is being disturbed. Okay, even the latest fintech with digital banking and stuff, kind of making businesses becoming more open. For example, the largest quote unquote fintech bank in the world today is claimed to be Starbucks. Where the people are putting their money in and they become a financial institution larger than a bank, and it's global. So you see the disruption happening.
We'll be right back after the break.
Ready to unlock your financial future? Join the Taka Token airdrop and get rewarded. Sign up on Galaxy, complete missions, and earn points. Points convert to Taka tokens in 2025. Don't miss out. Join the airdrop today.
Happening. When it comes to tech or insurance, it's just improving of the existing model through tech model. Not yet a model where they're going to kind of becoming really disturb and remove as a middleman and going back to the community base. So this is just a small nocta point I wanted to raise, and I let maybe Professor Yunus to go on and answer this question along with, of course, Dr. Paris.
Thank you very much. Let me just answer Madame Shireen's query, and I can focus mainly on the takaful because takaful as an idea, it started as a mutual. It all started at the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as evidenced in the what we call al hadith of al Ash'ariyin. So these are people in Medina who, whenever they travel or they are faced with famine or shortage of food, they will simply pool their resources in the form of food, and they will pull them in one place, and they will simply distribute them equally. So that was a very basic idea of mutuality, and this is the Sharia scholars, when they come to find an evidence for takaful, this is the evidence actually which is mainly used. But in the modern world, this idea of mutuality still exists, but simply to cover certain risks, small risks. So, because the idea is presented in the modern world, the idea of mutual Islamic mutual assistance or mutual guarantee has been widely accepted. So, the Sharia scholars, the regulators, they want this to change into what we call a profit making entity rather than simple mutual that would cover small risks. And because they saw in Takaful an alternative to conventional insurance, so this has to go commercial. But the element of mutuality and mutual guarantee, and what we call in Islamic jurisprudence ta'awun, the main idea is actually ta'awun, which is cooperation, because we can still achieve two objectives. One is the objective of cooperation, which is the mutual guarantee. The second is the profit. So since both of them can be achieved, so both Sharia authorities and regulators saw this as an opportunity. Number one, to meet the demand of a wide number of customers who want their insurance activities to be in compliance with Sharia. And number two, for the regulator as well as the other stakeholders, it's also an opportunity to diversify the business. That is to diversify the portfolio, the insurance portfolio. So there are blessings when we look at Takaful. It's actually a cooperative framework that tends to achieve cooperation among the participants in the pool. And second is a business opportunity. And that has grown from 10 to 15% annual growth. That has even outpaced insurance in certain regions, in certain countries. The growth rate of Takaful is actually more than the growth rate of insurance. So, despite this growth rate, which is very promising, the main question that was asked in the first place, why this mutual concept is still small. So there are a number of reasons why the takaful as a representation of mutuality from the Islamic perspective is still small. Of course, it's still small compared, I mean, when we say small, small in terms of what? If you look at the period in which the takaful has grown is a very, very short period. So we have insurance that has been there for the last 500 or 600 years, and you have takaful that is just for the last 35 or 40 years at most. So there is a big difference in terms of the maturity of the market. We are still not mature yet. This is number one. In terms of size, I think we are all aware. If you read any report, if you read any data about takaful, you will see that there is a growth rate of takaful which is higher than the insurance rate in certain regions, in certain countries. In terms of legislations, almost all the Gulf states, all the North African states, they have legislations in takaful. Number of takaful companies has grown dramatically. So when it comes to the growth, we have growth in the assets. Growth is in the number of, what we call gross contributions of takaful is growing. Number of takaful companies is growing. More legislations come in. And now, as Mr. David has mentioned, the element of fintech is making its way to the takaful world. Although we are still at the infantry stage, we are just at the beginning. We still don't have a takaful, what we call a blockchain. We still don't have the infrastructure, the fintech, what we call the takaful tech infrastructure yet. Although there are attempts, and I know there are attempts, but that is the new direction of takaful in the future. That is to go in tech. Although there is a difference between digitalization and using the fintech technology or the fintech in takaful, but when you see that the takaful has used digitalization in a good way, although there are some shortcomings, this will also open the door. This has opened the door for takaful to go also fintech. And I probably he, Mr. David, is in a good position to explain these dimensions.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you both very much. I think it bears a little bit more context here for the benefit of the audience. What is the difference between, let's say, mutual insurance, Takaful insurance, and stock insurance company? Now, I'm just gonna go very briefly on that topic. So when we think about the stock insurance company, it's essentially an insurance company where the funds are provided by an external party who we will call the shareholder. And those shareholders are actually in it for the profit, right? So they want to make money. Now, that money, so whatever money is there is used to pay claims. So there is also premiums that are contributed by the insured themselves. And those premiums essentially are revenue for the stock insurance company. And the entire pool of capital there is then used to pay claims, etc. Whatever is left over is then claimed by the shareholders as essentially their profit. Now, when it comes to mutual insurance companies with Takaful as a subset, this is slightly different. So that in theory, there's no external shareholder. The pool of funds that are there, the funds that are there to pay claims are entirely contributed by the contributions of the insured themselves. And theoretically, whatever is left over is then redistributed among the contributors or the insured themselves. So this fundamentally is the difference between a stock insurance company and a Takaful insurance company, now, or a mutual slash Takaful. Now, within the mutual space itself, Takaful is a subset of the mutual company because of the compliance aspect. So Takaful has to comply with the Sharia in the sense of the investments that are being made, in the sense of who has ownership of the ultimate ownership of the funds. So Takaful practices a separate accounting, the accounts of quote unquote the shareholders and the accounts of the risk fund and all of these other things. So Takaful is a little bit different from the mutual insurance, but not significantly different. I'm happy if you guys would correct me if I was wrong there. But fundamentally, both are, as Dr. Yunus pointed out, for-profit establishments or organizations. So the Takaful Insurance Company and the Stock Insurance Company are both for-profit organizations. And I guess my next point is, now to David's point, in the very origin of insurance, the profit motive wasn't really there. It was more of a to help one another profit motive. Now, do you think the fact that let's say a lot of mutual companies have demutualized has to do with the fact that there is a desire or need to move towards the profit motive? And then how do you see Takaful within that? Because to Dr. Yunus' point, Takaful is actually the one of the bright lights within the mutual insurance industry, which is actually growing faster than the larger insurance industry. So your thoughts on profit in the insurance industry?
Well, I'm not so sure that there are very large mutuals in the world, you know, in France and in America, for example. They're very, very large indeed. So there are very successful mutuals. There's an organization called ICMIF. It's the International Corporation of Mutual Insurance Federation, which includes a lot of Takaful companies as well as a lot of the large mutuals. It does the whole span from the top to bottom, and it's a very large foundation, a very large organization indeed. And in fact, has invested along with investment banks into climate change and all sorts of new risks. So I do think that it's not just as black and white as saying, you know, it's about profit, because these mutuals are very large, like the Mutual of Omaha. And if you look at France, of course, which has a lot of connections with the Islamic world, you'll find many mutuals there. But I think the ICMIF is also helping, bringing in technology, as Professor Yunus says, to help us with this mutualization process, and also because the difference with Takaful, of course, is that you know, as you say, is investments and interest and uncertainty needs to be dealt with, and of course the management team take a very small fee in Takaful, but in a stock company, the management fee take an awful lot of the shares and the profit. Yeah.
Just to add on that, very interesting point, whether modern capital companies are only for profit. The fact that the answer is no. First of all, the word takaful is all about mutual cooperation, mutual guarantee. It's all about what we call ta'awun, as I said. So that's the very nature of takaful. By having a company running the risk fund and taking a wakala fee that looks a profit, but the main player here is not the takaful company. The main player are the participants who are trying to pay for each other's perils and risks. They simply need someone to run the risk fund, and he's taking his wakala fee and some investment return, and that's it. But the mutuality is happening, the mutual guarantee is happening actually. However, the new dimension of this takaful, maybe I can just relay the Malaysian experience. just last month, the Central Bank of Malaysia issued a new policy document called Ta'awun, Ta'awun in Takaful. I mean, how do we achieve cooperation in a Takaful setup? I mean, there are two elements here. It's a reminder for us that Takaful is all about cooperation. Number two, this cooperation has to be sophisticated. It's not simply people covering each other risks, or paying for each other's risks. The This policy document has even gone further to explore the possibility of the Takaful company itself practicing ta'awun with the participants. They are by itself is doing ta'awun, meaning how can a Takaful company be one of the major players in achieving this cooperative objective? One of the solutions provided is that could be this is what we call musharaka ta'awuniya. A new concept was introduced. Actually, is our institute that developed this. So we developed a new concept called musharaka ta'awuniya. This is actually a cooperative partnership. So there are two types of partnership. One is commercial, where the main objective is to increase wealth, and that is to increase profit. And there is a cooperative partnership. The main objective is you and I will cooperate, but to help each other. But this cooperation, in the Takaful word, as the policy document put it, is for the Takaful company and the participants. Both together, they form a fund. So the risk fund in a Takaful company is formed not only by the participants, but by the participant on the one side and the Takaful company on the other, forming what we call the Musharaka Ta'awaniya Risk Fund. So here the Takaful company is also taking the risk. It's not only taking a wakala fee, but it's also taking a risk. And by taking a risk, we are borrowing, so to say, the profit and loss sharing that exists in a normal musharaka, putting it into this ta'awun setup, and telling the world that you can still do musharaka ta'awuniya. That means even the company can help the participants cover the risks. So that has an impact on the underwriting. That has an impact on the claims experience. That has an impact on the solvency margin of the fund. And that, when we have tested the model, it proved to be very competitive, if not the new model of Takaful. So there are some innovations happening here and there. In order to what? In order to maintain and preserve the main objective of Takaful, which is actually ta'awun. So if a Takaful is not achieving ta'awun, cooperation, then you are simply a company for profit 100%. People can hardly see how are you helping us? How are you helping the and if you are talking about a micro Takaful product, which is meant to be a social product, they have to see this ta'awun in the full sense of the word. So the authorities here are trying to bring back the value of Takaful in practice.
I do have to push back there because these are conversations that we have internally as well. And the profit motive is for us something pretty scary. And I'll give you an example. So there's an article a couple of years ago about Boston Mutual, which is a mutual. And again, there's some differences between mutual and Takaful, but nonetheless. And what was the article essentially described a for-profit management. All right. Now the concept of the mutual remains the same. The risk funds and the money in the risk funds technically belong to policyholders. But there is a for-profit management, and that for-profit management was extracting a lot from the fund itself, in high salaries and like expenses, and they were also a little bit less stringent on expense management because there wasn't a shareholder-led board to respond to, right? So the shareholders are the policyholders, and each policyholder has only so little shares because his shares is tied to his policy, and the policies are usually small. So there isn't any large player or any way for the shareholders to organize. And so the for-profit management could get away with a lot. And so this article was kind of like an expose on look how much they're making and they, blah, blah, blah. So corruption in that model. Now then when it comes to, let's say you are doing a musharaka, meaning you are letting the Takaful operator add funds in a profit risk sharing way to the Takaful risk fund, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there because then it biases the Takaful operator to deny claims because they're like, oh, there's a little bit of incentive for us. And I don't say this in a way, I actually, ourselves as a company, when we were designing our product, we were faced with this issue. We were like, look, if we don't have skin in the game, are we really going to do a good job, right? With managing the risk, with the pricing, with keeping the expenses low. But at the same time, if we have profit that comes from there being less claims, are we not going to have some bias in the way we handle claims, especially in the way that the traditional, conventional takaful and mutuals and insurance companies in general handle claims? Because the way that insurance companies handle claims in general is done internally. So we have a claims department. The claims department makes this decisions, and there's very little transparency there. So for me, this is one of the core issues we face in the insurance industry today, and something that we actively as Takara try to solve. Your thoughts?
Well,
So they,
I personally am using AI to help with the claims experience, and I think this is extremely important. I can introduce causal AI, right? I mean, causal AI removes the bias in claims. Well, it removes the bias in many things because you're actually finding the cause of what happened, and then applying philosophy or computational linguistics to prove that that was the cause. So if A happened, B couldn't have happened, or if A happened, C and D happened. So by applying that to claims, and that's what Lemonade did in a certain way when they came out as an insurtech. But I think, as Professor Yunus says, there's not a lot of really new disruptive models coming out, but I think there will be very soon. So causal AI will help to remove the problems and the fraud and that occur in the claims market. I think on micro, talking about micro as we were, I've got great interest in Takaful being used at the grassroots level, right? Uh, uh, micro insurance, call it that, or financial inclusion, is about building from the village upwards. It's not about coming down from the top, from the management. So when I work with microinsurance in India with the Microinsurance Academy, we taught the women, and the women are driving really the microinsurance. We taught them. We created games to teach them how to spend money on healthcare. And those board games at the time, this was pre, having apps and things like that. We taught many women in India how to manage the monies that they had for the healthcare of their families, and healthcare is a very important subject here when it comes to mutuality, right? So. I, I think this is a very broad topic here, but when it comes to claims, I think we can take advantage of AI in a proper way, and not using just ChatGPT either, endowing it with this causality, which has been around for 50, 60 years, a very long time. And this is something I think everyone's going to see happen very soon, causal AI. So I'll stop there.
I think I totally agree with Mr. David. That is the way forward for Takaful. This issue of bias and wrong claim experience, and I mean, judging from some complaints from customers, yeah, you feel like there is some kind of an injustice that is happening or some biasness. Um, in the classical way, the way we handle this kind of things, of course, is through regulations, through internal and external audit, um, through looking into the claims experience or the complaints experience, litigation, how many complaints then only then we know there are something of bias. I mean, theoretically, we have the regulations already, we have the audit, we have um, the supervision of the central bank, but the way forward, as Mr. David said, is the insurtech or the fintech or the takaful tech, especially the AI, using a blockchain, because the main objective, one of the main advantages of fintech is transparency, ensuring adequacy. And of course, reading through this, still there are some, probably Mr. David can also elaborate on this, how much human intervention can also manipulate technology, can also manipulate the AI. There are some views that even though AI and fintech is going to is a disruption, is a huge disruption, and that means we are moving to a new era of claims handling, underwriting. But there are some legal concerns, even some Sharia concerns on what are the parameters of fintech actually in Takaful. For example, if you put a smart contract or a Takaful smart contract, there are always issues of how to capture that or how to make it that in compliance with the Sharia principles of a contract. So if you are to offer your product through a smart contract, and that may even assess the smart contract can do the underwriting, probably the assessment of the risk, the classification of the risk, and even trigger the claims when it happens. And now, as I'm very happy to know that Mr. David is involved in this insurance index, the AI. To what extent using this kind of technology is in full compliance with the Islamic principles of takaful, especially on the contract. There is another dimension on the Sharia parameters of using fintech. Still a very new topic. Uh, Last year, I wrote a paper on smart contract, and I come across many issues, legal, Sharia, and others. But that will open the door for innovation rather than anything else. And the future is here, actually. We need to capitalize so much on fintech, on AI, to close those gaps that exist in the
Uh,
takaful industry.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we're gonna have heated debate on that. You triggered, I think, for sure, Sharon, on the smart contract issue. What is important, I'm going to be a little bit controversial. For AI, it's still a new industry, and there's a lot of black box when it comes to it. Ethical AI, if we have few major company owning the data like Microsoft or Google, we're in big trouble for sure, because it's totally decentralized, and we might face. And I'm in favor of AI, but decentralized AI for sure, and pushing that forward. But I will let Sharon maybe answer maybe on the smart contract discussion that you just raised, Doctor, and give you an update on what she's working on Takada. Go ahead, Sharon.
I think David is itching to jump in. Please.
He wants to reply. Yeah, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Well, I think, yeah. Well, I think this is why I mentioned causal AI, because AI is just two letters, and I think it's very misunderstood in a lot of ways. And I think the insurance industry is, my personal opinion, is kind of overdosing on ChatGPT. I think ChatGPT has a lot of limitations when it comes to the things we're talking about here. Causal AI uses subject matter experts in order to create indexes and then extend those indexes baselines and the forces that are on them, up and down forces, to do predictions into the future. Therefore, we could have a Sharia subject matter expert involved in creating the causal AI objects, and that subject matter expert, which is what we're already doing in other sectors, would then be able to drive a proper a proper set of asset objects that can be used and embedded into any kind of architecture that one is using. And so I would strongly, I agree with you on the controversy of AI, but I think we solve a lot of problems by using causal AI. Now, one can look that up, I guess, but I did a paper on it for healthcare, fraud protection. Now, the other thing is, yes, the smart contracts themselves are a cyber risk, they're a Ponzi risk. There are many problems around smart contracts. But when one is doing parametric insurance, and I don't know how much parametric insurance has penetrated the Takaful market, probably not at the moment. I would need to check that. But this provides a certainty of payment. It's not paid on the on the loss. It's paid on an event, and that event could be death. That event could be, it could take us into catastrophes. It could take us into any kind of event, and it reduces the claim cycle. In fact, you pre-agree a figure based on an event, and when that event happens, you use blockchain-based data certainty to pay that claim. And I think that is going to be a very, very valuable change in the way that we do insurance in the future. And I don't think it violates any of the Sharia principles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just to,
both of you
just to
have
add
been
on
just the
that,
perfect. Yeah, go
mm,
ahead.
just mm, just to add on that, there are two good examples on these parametric triggers. One actually is still in Malaysia, the Munich Re Takaful. I was honored to be the chairman of the Sharia board for about 14 years, and we have approved the parametric trigger to actually pay the claims upon certain triggers caused by floods, because Malaysia is well known for its flooding areas in the north of Malaysia. Now there is another example, a very good example, the World Bank Drive product in the Horn of Africa, in Somalia, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya. This is actually a completely parametric trigger model. There are two versions. One is conventional, the other one is Islamic. And for the Islamic, it's actually a World Bank project, but being implemented by a local insurance company called Zepri. And it is entirely a parametric trigger for drought. So when the drought reaches certain level, so that would trigger the payment for the pastoralist in that area. So they're using satellite in order to assess the level of pasture that exists or doesn't exist in the area being affected. But these are small. I mean, these are only 2 or 3 models. It's not yet, as far as I know, is not fully adopted by the Takaful industry, especially for catastrophe risks. But we are seeing examples like that.
Fantastic. So both of you have been literally the perfect advocates for what we do at Tekada. Just to advance the conversation, we at Takeda, we're actually building the technology that enables people to mutually protect one another with no profit incentive. And it's really inspired by Takaful. So when we first started the company, we were like, we want to build Takaful on the blockchain. And as soon as we started building, we saw that there was an avenue to really take this into an even more, I want to say, pure, takaful, aspirational thing using the blockchain. So what we ended up building was a technology that allows people to form their own community insurance without us being involved in any management whatsoever. So we developed the smart contracts for 2 things. One is the algorithm for underwriting, risk management, pricing, etc. And the other one is the smart contract for decentralized claims management. So for and this all these smart contracts run independently from us, the company. So let's say a community wants to get together and they say, well, we want to create what will be coming very soon, the Life DAO. It's a life insurance alternative. And we will form this community and we will use Takada's technology to run the entire quote unquote mutual protection organization. Because insurance is such a loaded word. So we decided to call it mutual protection organization. Now, these smart contracts run their algorithms and the community itself manages the fund, i.e. they don't really actually have to do very much, but if they wanted to make changes, they would vote on it and they will come and they will say, hey, check it out, you guys, we need to upgrade the smart contracts in X, this and that way. For example, if they wanted to say, well, I think we can take a little bit more risk, we can lower our reserve requirements. But everything else is automated and it's done for them through these smart contracts. Claims management, for example, is something that is done entirely by the members themselves in a transparent way using the technology. Okay. And everything is on chain so that people can see how the claims have been adjudicated. Okay. But of course, everything is anonymous. So essentially that's what we've built. And I think we're very proud of it because we've actually taken these whole principles. By the way, it is the Mutual Protection DAO is an entirely non-profit organization, right? They do it to protect one another. And because we as a company, we serve at their pleasure, they pay us the protocol fee, okay, which is the technology use fee essentially. But we don't have any profit incentive. So we don't really control how they handle their claims at all. And again, to David's point, AI is definitely in the pipeline, although there are many, many problems with AI still, as Murad has said. But we've taken the profit incentive out of it. And this is what I think the future of insurance looks like. Thoughts?
I think this is how we, in the early days of microinsurance, that we encouraged everyone to handle the claims, right? I mean, in India and Africa, the group of the members decided if someone's cow was eaten by a leopard, they would pay the claim. If someone had drunk themselves and needed a new liver, maybe they turned that down. You know, they had the choice to decide what how to pay the claim. And now, using a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, one can achieve that. But how are you handling the reinsurance portion of this? Because every insurance needs some kind. Well, protection is a better word. I agree. Needs reinsurance. So how are you doing
Yeah,
that?
a very good question. Actually, I wanted to be a little bit controversial, Dr. Yunus, when it comes to the principle of Takaful, mashallah, is it's pure, it's amazing, and stuff like that. And my encounter, and I don't want to cite some country, but when I was sitting down with some of the scholar in some of local country, Islamic country, I was asking them, what do you think about the way takaful is applied in certain lead nation, Islamic nation, and they wouldn't make a fatwa. They would just leave it alone. They say, listen, and I agree with that. Actually it's better to have something that is close to the takaful model and close to the Islamic principle than not having it. So some of the issue that they were facing, they say, listen, if we take only 20% of the claim, it becomes an issue because we cannot compete with traditional insurance. So by decree, the ruler can apply just take 90% of the contribution fund in order to make the takaful sustainable and compete in local market in Islamic country. When it comes to other country, maybe like Malaysia and stuff like that, then you have like the father of Takaful of Malaysia looking at the concept, say, okay, we were going in that direction, and now I'm less happy on the direction where we're going because it doesn't fit. And you have the reinsurance coming along, and who are traditional reinsurance coming and supporting, especially the reinsurance. Takaful is not strong enough to supply the Ritakaful, so they have to go to traditional insurance to even get reinsurance coming on board,
Mm.
which is like moving the shaitan from the house and bringing him back through the windows. And then when I go to European nation, it's even worse because they will impose on the local Takaful players, especially in France, to reinvest in non-Sharia compliance bonds, interest-bearing things, because of the regulator imposing for the Takaful to exist, to take non-Sharia compliance or not accepting, So all the Takaful that exist today in Europe, they're like hand to hand with all ribawi system because they have no choice. So like in Muslim country, we're facing problem internally. Globally, as we grow still, alhamdulillah, yes, we're growing. And we're not a minority. Like people say, a niche market. Takaful is not a niche market. The Muslim population is 2 billion strong. We're not a niche market, we're a huge market opportunity and the fastest growing population in the world, which will need Islamic product eventually. Okay. But my question or my debate here is like, we borrow from the traditional finance in the banking system, and now we are kind of borrowing a little too much or letting too much also on the takaful concept, where we allow traditional finance to come in and support us. And that's why we say, hey, there's something that's to be changed. Something needs to evolve and remove all these kind of things. And is it the right time? Do we have technology? Do we have the power to do that? And how can we move into that direction? That's few of the question I had struggle with, to be honest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murad. Well, this alone needs a conference to discuss the critical issues of Takaful. But I would say Takaful, just like any other industry, it has some what we call critical issues. This is an industry evolving, and as you have something evolving, so you are trying to bring Sharia concepts, trying to apply them in the modern world, in modern finance. And when we say that, you are trying, for example, you bring a Sharia contract such as murabaha, and you want to apply it in the modern world in a banking institution, or you bring tabarru' and you try to apply it in a modern insurance company. There are always challenges. Therefore, the fuqaha, Sharia scholars, they exercise their right to do ijtihad. They look into some difficulties, and they were faced with two choices. Either we stop this takaful and we go back home, or we exercise the ijtihad of maslaha, saddu dhara'i', al-urf, al-istihsan. Our usul al-fiqh is rich of principles that can accommodate new issues and make you, I mean, this is what you call ijtihad. So, for example, the question that you have asked, a takaful company cannot do, I mean, when doing reinsurance, they are supposed to do it only with re-takaful. This is a principle which is actually approved by the Majma' al-Fiqhi of Jeddah, of Mecca, by IOFI. That is a principle. However, the same authorities have allowed the takaful company to do reinsurance with conventional reinsurance, but with some parameters. The first parameter, there should not be any re-takaful company in the market. So the moment there's a re-takaful company, you are not supposed to do reinsurance with a conventional. However, the other condition says, with the presence of a re-takaful company, but that re-takaful company doesn't have capacity. They are not able to do re-takaful. They don't have capacity. So with the absence of capacity, even though you have a re-takaful company, but is not able to cover your risk, when you want to cede, let's say 50% of your risk, you are a takaful company, you want to cede 50% of your risk, or let's say 90%, that re-takaful cannot accept this 90% or even 10%. It's an issue of capacity. So only then the Sharia authorities allowed this takaful company to do reinsurance on temporary basis, and they have aligned these two words on temporary. This is on fiqh al-haja, wal-haja tuqaddaru biqadriha, as the fuqaha have said. That's why we need to have Sharia committee to follow up on this haja, either monthly or biannually, or so they have to assess the moment there is a takaful company with capacity. then that Takaful company has to shift to that Takaful. This is a governance issue. If we don't have the Sharia governance framework, Takaful companies or Takaful companies may fall into the haram. They may do something Sharia non-compliant. So this is the role of Sharia scholars, to be vigilant on this haja, which is exceptional. These are exceptional situations. And other things, technology, is it the absolute solution? It can solve a lot of problems, but technology now is at the scrutiny. The Majma' Fiqhi, the last session of Majma' Fiqhi, for the second time, they want to rule whether cryptocurrency is Sharia compliant or not. They have not decided yet. For the second time, Al-Majma' al-Fiqhi has not come up with the decision whether smart contract is Sharia compliant or not. For the second time, 2 consecutive years, 12 or 13 researchers presented trying to go deep into the smart contract. They are still not, they have not decided yet. Why? Because of the complexity of the smart contract itself. So on the one hand, we have high hopes of technology, fintech, but we have to be also careful of the Sharia issues that the technology can take us to, the Sharia non-compliance issues of possession, issues of the contract, whether it is fulfilled, issues of transfer of ownership, issues of the satisfaction between the parties, issues of an asset that suddenly becomes Sharia non-compliant. So there are certain parameters, there are certain issues that have to be taken when we look
I,
into
I, would-
technology.
I would agree. Look, I will agree 100% on the, when it comes to following our scholars and when they make ijtihad and stuff like that. This is exactly what I say to the masses, that the foresight of the scholars is for the greater maslaha. When you think you are actually being not in the right things, this is not of your concern as a layman. The scholars establish, law and fatwa in order to better our condition. This is something that is I agree with 100%, and that's why I commit on that. When it comes to definitely the technology evolution, I agree with you that technology and the scholars are looking at now at the issue of a smart contract, digital cryptocurrency, whatever you name it. To be honest with you, I'm not yet too much, I would say, afraid of them not understanding fully what's happening, because even the top regulator in the world, leading a nation like Singapore, Dubai, are looking at the issue in a non-agnostic view, not even as a Sharia view, and they look at it as how can we regulate that. So imagine if the top regulator in the world were ahead of the game when it comes to crypto, blockchain, and everything. They're facing challenges because it's something new. So I'm not too much worried about our own, scholars, because this is still fresh and stuff like that. But I have to admit that we cannot, as a Muslim nation, when we bring new things, and that's our job as innovator, blockchain technologies and stuff like that, to break it down to our scholars, to break it down to our mufti, to look at the blockchain technology in the different eyes. The car, when it was invented, was seen as an innovation that might not be good for the horse and the industry of the horsing industry back then when it was launched, and it was an innovation that was not well welcomed even by the non-Muslim at the time. When you look at the printing press during the Ottoman Empire, it was also something that printing press was something not acceptable in our culture. And then we kind of, as a ummah, let go of the I would say, Muslim leading in the printing press and being able to use this technology and surpass our ummah to rise. So I think technology that are pure like blockchain, it's something that has to have definitely, is like a car is a car. Blockchain or internet is pure. Is how you use it that make it bad. The blockchain has nothing wrong with most of the scholar I'm talking to. They like the technology and they see it as a good way. When it comes to crypto, there has been a lot of fatwa actually coming out of Saudi Arabia, looking deeply into the understanding of what crypto is, and not all crypto are created equal. So some crypto are like, if you use the fiat currency to buy drugs, it's the same thing when you use the cryptocurrency to buy drugs. It's not allowed, it's haram. So the challenges that we're facing is like, how do we regulate them? Which one are okay? And kind of having an open discussion. What I'm afraid of when you see the Republican and the Democrat parties fighting about allowing crypto to become the currency of the world, I'm afraid that we might miss out as a Muslim, not being able to capitalize on this technology and let the West actually lead into the leadership of having Bitcoin as an asset class like the gold, and they call it the digital gold, and starting to pile up blockchain Bitcoin for their own interest. Okay, so this is a debate that, of course, the scholar will have to look at. But inshallah, I hope the Ummah will not be behind that, and we will lead in innovation and make sure we take advantage of using the technology to revive and maybe change the way Islamic finance has been done, and not just follow whatever the traditional finance has been doing. I think with the rise of blockchain and technology, there is a way to reinvent a world without riba, digital banking through blockchain, community-based banking, community-based insurance, and everything can be revived. But that's another debate, as you mentioned. Anything else, David? Go ahead.
Well, I
Yeah,
know. I think that I think when it comes to crypto, I'm involved in crypto insurance companies and things like this, but not on the Takaful side. But I think what I'm seeing is there's a great advantage here because when I was looking at retakaful and weather and catastrophe bonds, everyone, the importance in Islamic finance of tying something to a physical asset is very important, and I think tying these a lot of virtual currencies to a physical asset is also a very good idea because a lot of them are going to fail. So if you look at the UK and you look around the world, a lot of people are looking at stable coins now attached to real world assets. Like property and things like this, and I think that's going to lean in a great advantage for the Sharia scholar, but that will accept a cryptocurrency attached to a physical asset.
Thank you so much. In the
just to
interest
add
of
on that.
time,
Yeah,
yes, please, Dr. Yunus.
just a small comment on what our dear brother Murad has just mentioned. Um, yeah, you are right. You're right. Technology has to be fully adopted and vigorously and with a lot of enthusiasm. Uh, the point is, Sharia scholars have never called or even hinted that we should not capitalize on technology. On the contrary, actually, I attend the Majma Fiqhi every time. I'm a member of IOFI, by the way, and I can tell you, it's not. It's a must. It's a must that we have to adopt technology. It's a wajib. It's a wajib. That's why we have a lot of Sharia resolutions on technology. Actually, one of the earliest Sharia resolutions for Majma is on how to use electronic platforms in business, in commerce, including the e-commerce, electronic commerce. Um, it's just that we have to be careful when it comes to certain technological advances. I mean, smart contract, I can tell you, I have done a research for the last 2 years on smart contract, and there are issues that has to be fixed. When you talk about blockchain, especially when it uses Ether or Bitcoin, this mode of payment, this medium of exchange, I mean, the Ethereum or the Bitcoin that can be used in a blockchain. Of course, blockchain can also not use this, but in case we want to use it as a mode of payment, as a legal tender, the issue is whether it is money. So we have to solve this issue. Is this cryptocurrencies money or just financial asset or just a medium of settlement? What are they at the end of the day before we can put them in a blockchain? So these are the what we call some of the issues for clarity, because there are even legal concerns, especially cross-border. The cross-border transactions, if you use blockchain in cross-border framework, there are legal issues between the jurisdictions. So this is why we need to have research and we need to have continuous debate to solve these issues. I still remember the e-commerce when the debate started about 30 years ago. There were some scholars who prohibited this because the two parties cannot see each other. So Majlisul Aqd which is called Majlis al-Aqd, the contract session, is not fulfilled because neither party is present. But the Ijtihad has said it is not necessary for two people to be present to conclude a contract. They can also do it on electronically. So these are modern Ijtihad. So we are with technology. We will continue to call for it, and fintech is the way forward. This is what I believe.
May I
So this
just
is
mention one thing?
okay.
Because of time, but in Abu Dhabi, the company that I was working with on blockchain in Estonia, right, which came out of the cyber attack, have now been bought by an Abu Dhabi company, IHC, and they are developing a cryptocurrency around the bill, not around, so a bill is a physical asset. You exchange the bill. You don't have to download the entire internet to verify a bill between two people. It's called Alpha Bill, and it's being developed in Abu Dhabi. So I think these are innovations that are very good.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
gentlemen. And
thank
in
you.
the interest of time,
Yeah, thank.
I'm really gonna have to stop everyone now, and I'll give you guys each
Yeah,
about
just
30 seconds to a minute to wrap up. But let me say something and address the issue that David did bring up about reinsurance and re-Takaful, and what does that look like in the Tekadao ecosystem. So David, what we do is, as you pointed out, a parametric insurance, and what we have in our system is a self-adjusting underwriting algorithm. So if the loss ratios exceed a certain amount, we have a benefit multiplier that is assigned to each individual based on their risk. If the loss ratio exceeds a certain amount, we're reducing the benefit multiplier for everyone. And therefore, the fund constantly self-adjusts to make sure that it's enough money to pay out. That's layer number one in the how do we solve the reinsurance problem. Layer number two, the style of the re-Takaful way, we as a company, because we are a Web3 company, we have tokens as well, and we have a reserve treasury, and we have investors that are from the general public. So we have the ability to provide a Qard Hasan or a no interest loan to the TDAOs, to the individual DAOs, in case there is some catastrophic event that causes the self-adjusting algorithm not to be able to catch up. And we can do that because we have a whole token economy that we can tap into. And we have our own investors who will say loan us money in order to loan the company money. And so this is how we solve that reinsurance problem. It's really a two-pronged approach. Now, in the interest of time, I know this conversation has been super engaging, but because I know Dr. Yunus needs to go, so I'm gonna give you guys each about 30 seconds to a minute to wrap up and to give us your last words. And let's start with Dr. Yunus.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very, very insightful session. I have the honor to meet Mr. Murad, Mr. David, and definitely I will learn from their expertise. And I will be following your activity, inshallah, your company's activities, inshallah. Thank you so much for inviting me, and looking forward to future sessions, inshallah.
And
David, please.
Similarly, lovely to meet everybody. I think that Malaysia, Bank Negara, have been a great pioneer for Takaful, and adopting that in Indonesia and other parts of the world. I totally agree. The Islamic population in the world is very large and growing. I think actuarially by 2035 it'll be a larger percentage still, and therefore it's important to have the right solutions for that community, or that if I can call it affinity group. So I think, and what you've done, I didn't realize that you'd developed DAO. I thought you were journalists, and I didn't realize that you had also a solution. So that's also very enterprising, and if you can tokenize it and tokenize it well, then you're well ahead of the game, I think. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, David. Murad.
Thank you so much, Professor Yunus, and of course, David. It was amazing actually to share with you this panel. Really enjoyed it a lot. I guess, Dr. Yunus, you have for me an open invitation to come to Malaysia and discuss with the IUFI and everybody there to share what we've been working for the past 3 years. We've been backed up by top international VCs, thought leaders into the space, and we believe that we're working on something very amazing. Our aim is not to have just an insurance takaful. It's to have actually an insurance that is very inclusive, not only to Muslim but to non-Muslim alike, and being very transparent, very helpful for the new generation to come, and also to become like a micro insurance also for the less fortunate nation who are not allowed or able to get the money from or support from global insurance, that they leave them completely uninsured all over Africa. And the use of a smart contract blockchain can enable them to have a very simple, cheap technology to get access to those kind of insurance, inshallah. And looking forward for our next discussion. And you definitely on my LinkedIn and my follow member for the next step. And thank you so much.
Thank you.